Hey everybody, Joe Workman here, and in today's video, I wanted to quickly go over the new agent stacks, right? So I'm just gonna review the demo project, go over some of the settings, give you an idea of how to use them. So without further ado, let's go ahead and jump on in. Okay, so here is the agent demo file, and this is the actual file that was used to build the demo site that you probably already saw for agent, okay? So I'm gonna go over all the examples that we see inside that demo file and teach you how I did it, okay? So let's go ahead and actually let's look at the site really quick. So here is the actual site, and we'll notice here that the first example, we are going to hide content on mobile, okay? So here on the desktop, I'm showing a grid of 9 images, but then on mobile, we're only gonna show 1 image, right? And it's important to note here that you can't just resize the browser, okay, and see what it's going to look like on mobile. That is not what Agent does, right? Agent does not use media queries or CSS to hide things. The whole point is that it delivers customized content to the browser based on the device and other data that your user is actually using, okay? So if we wanted to see what it would actually look like on mobile, so if you have Xcode installed, you can actually use the iPhone simulator inside Xcode. Okay. And essentially you open up, it's just an iPhone, right? So you can open up Safari, go to your browser. And what we'll notice is if we scroll down, we only see a single image in this area. Okay. So again, this is the iPhone simulator that ships with Xcode. You can just download that from the App Store and go ahead and it'll just launch like an iPhone. You can go ahead and up in the hardware menu, you can go to device, you can choose the operating system, and as you see here, you can choose iPads, iPhones, iPhone S's, iPhone Plus sizes, right? So there's a bunch of devices here that you can choose, and this is how you can test as if it was a native device on your Mac. So here's how we accomplish that. We'll see that we have this agent stack. Now inside here, I'm just using my free placeholder image stack. It just like picks random images off online and throws them in there for us, okay? So in the agent stack, go ahead and let's look at the settings. First, you'll notice the first few settings here are basically only settings to help you preview things in RapidWeaver. So by default, it's gonna be desktop, macOS, and Safari, okay? If we wanted to potentially preview this, and let's go ahead and preview this page. So now we're going to see if someone from a desktop running Mac and Safari was viewing this web page, this is what they would see. Okay. Now, if we wanted to potentially see what it would look like if someone on a mobile was on there, we can go ahead and change the device to be mobile. Okay. This will customize, this basically forces you to be able to preview the content as if we were on a mobile device inside RapidWeaver. Okay. So all of these settings at the top, they do not ever get published. They are only used for preview, okay? So you can actually preview your content, right? So that way, if you're previewing, you wanna make sure something looks good before you actually publish it, right? So this allows us to actually preview that data. Okay, the next settings. First is the action, okay? Now the action allows us to show content, hide content, or both. Okay, in this particular instance, I'm using both. And when you use both, what you'll notice is we have an if-else statement. So it's essentially, if my condition is true, display this content, else display the content below. So in this particular case, my condition is mobile device. That's it. So here I have device set to mobile. If that is true, okay, it's going to display what is in this drop area, which here I have a single image. If that is not true, it's going to go ahead and display the grid of images, okay? Now, if I wanted to target mobile and tablet users, I could do that, and I could do this. I could check mobile and tablet, and then for mobile and tablet users, it's going to show a single image, and then for desktop users, it will show a grid. Very simple, right? Very easy. Now, if you're wondering what bots are, that is basically search engines and other sort of bots on the internet that are going to troll your website. Now we can go into a little bit more advanced settings here. If we click on this plus button, you'll notice that we have some more detailed things that we can look at. We can go for platform and browser. Okay, So inside platform, you can say, I want to target Mac OS or whatever OSs you want to target. Okay. And these add to your condition. Now you can ignore devices. So if we go ahead and say, basically accept all devices that are running Mac OS, we can do that. Okay. Or all devices that are running iOS or something of that, or Linux. Okay. And then you can also target browsers. So I can target Safari and Chrome. So right now we would be targeting all iOS devices in this example that are running Safari and Chrome. Okay. So it really gives us some very granular data. Now, I really don't think many people are going to be targeting specific platforms and browsers very often. Okay. I think a majority of the time we're simply going to be targeting a device, right? So all mobile, all tablet, all desktop, or a mixture of those. Okay. That's probably what we're going to be doing a majority of the time. Now, if you only wanted to, change this up, let's go down a little bit. Okay. And let's look at, here's an example of using that platform specific data. So here in this example, I'm actually going to display a specific download button based on whether or not my users are on Mac, on a Windows machine, on an iOS device, or an Android device. Okay, so if we go ahead and look at this download for Mac button, you'll see that I have it set to show because I only want to show data if my condition is true. So here I'm going to show if they're on a desktop running Mac OS. That's it. Next off, if we look at the Windows, we'll see that we're going to show data if it's on a desktop running Windows. And of course, pretty simple, right? iOS is going to be show any device that's running iOS. And then further on Android, we can show any device on something running Android. So here's a good use case for finding the platform and delivering specific content to those users on that platform. Now let's look at the agent URL stacks. These are pretty cool because they allow you to customize the content based on purely passing parameters to the URL. Okay. So in this instance, if we look at displaying this product data, okay, we're by default displaying product A. If I want to display product B, I could click this button, okay, here. And if you'll notice, all that button did was added a little parameter to the URL. It added $product equals B, okay? And when it did that, it displayed the information for product B here. We no longer see information for product A, which we could go back to, right? Click on product A, and we get our information for product A. Okay, and what's cool, all of this is done inside of a single RapidWeaver page, okay? Let's go to this. Another example here is custom locations, right? Same thing. If we click on London, it's going to take us to location equals London. Okay. And same thing for San Francisco. So it allows us to, customize the content that users are going to see on the page. Now, next up is a very real world situation that I know a lot of you actually use, and that's building multi-language websites. Okay. So by default, if we look at this quote, we'll see that it is in English. I'm going to go ahead and click on German, and we'll see that this quote has been changed to German. And you'll notice that all it did is added some parameters to the end of the URL. Very easy. Let's go ahead and look at this page in RapidWeaver and see how we built it. So here we are on the agent URL page, and what you'll notice is, let's look at the agent URL stack that's controlling product A. If you look at the settings, you'll notice that the settings are exactly the same in terms of the action for the agent stack. We can show, hide, or do both, right? So both is going to give you that if-else logic. But for this instance, I just want to show, okay? The rule is going to be we want to parse URL parameters, okay? We're going to give it a key and a value. Now, this key and value is what gets passed to the URL, right? So as you saw, it was product equals B or product equals A, right? So that's exactly that key value pair that you're going to be setting here. Now, this particular stack has this setting checked, set as default value. What that does is if no parameters are passed to the URL at all, it's actually going to display this one as the default. So basically, it's defaulting product equals A on the page. So if we set product equals B in the URL, this one won't be displayed. but since nothing is set, product A will be displayed, okay? Then we have the persistence settings. We're gonna ignore those for right now, okay? We're gonna review those in just a few minutes. And this preview button is only for inside RapidWeaver preview. Again, this gives you a way to actually preview your layouts and content without actually having to open it up in a browser and add some URL parameters. Now, before we go on, let's look at some of these other rules. As you saw, the default rule was URL parameters, okay? We can also have logic based on URL parameter not present. What this does is basically it's allowing you to define a default. Basically what this does is it gives you another way to define a default for your page. So for this example, I set the key to product. So if no product was defined, basically in the URL, okay, this content would be displayed. Now, in this particular example, I wanted to display product A by default. So instead of using that setting, I just check this box saying set as default value. But if you want to separate that default value out, okay, you can do that simply by using that URL parameters not present rule. Now, the last rule, which I don't have an example of a use case inside this demo file, but it's pretty simple, right? You can basically parse the subdomain. So if you have, let's say, this is great for like language-based things. Maybe you have, or even location. Let's say you have english.mywebsite.com, right? Basically, what this could do is it could parse that English out and say, oh, we're on the English subdomain. I'm going to be displaying this data, okay? Or maybe you're doing london.mycompany.com and you want to have some specific data just for London, okay? And you can control all of that via the agent URL stack. Very powerful, very simple concept that you can go very far with. So further down the page, we'll notice that we have the product B stack. It's very similar here, only I set the product value to be B in the settings. And obviously I don't have it set as default value because I have product A as my default. And if we look at the location data, it's the same exact thing as the product, right? We're displaying the San Francisco data by default. And then we have our London data, which is location equals London, okay, as the URL parameters. So now let's look at the website localization and multi-language options. Some very cool things are possible here, okay? If you notice, I have 3 different quote stacks. All 3 have different languages. We have English, German, and Portuguese, okay? And if you look at the URL settings, we have lang equals English, which is set to a default value, okay? And on the German one, we have lang equals DE, which is German, okay? And then on the Portuguese one, we have lang equals PT, which is Portuguese. And then at the bottom here, we just have some buttons that we can use to switch. Now, I didn't show you how you can actually, have a button really easily and switch and add URL parameters via button. If you notice here, let's just look at the English one. Let's look at the set link. If you notice, all I did was add a question mark lang equals EN, which is my key value pair. Okay. And what that does is it's going to basically refresh the page and add those parameters to the URL for you. Very, very simple. So as you see here with the language concepts, it's very simple. It's exactly like we did the products and the cities. I have different content for different languages. Okay. And based on the URL parameters passed, I can change the language of this particular content area. Now, what about that persistence setting? Okay. So here we have, if you notice, the quote stacks for all of these languages have a persistence set to session. Let's jump over to Safari and see what that actually does. So here I'm on the agent URL page and I've set my language to be German. We can see that in the URL. I've clicked this German button. Okay. Now, since I've now set my language as German, that is set as a PHP session variable, what's called a PHP session variable. And it will be remembered across all of the web pages from the entire website. And I don't need to switch my language again. So we can see that by going over to the agent persist page. Now, once I click on this page, we'll notice that the language here is set to German, even though there are no URL parameters. And the reason is we have that persistence set to be session inside the agent URL stack. Now, I can easily switch my language preference by just passing another URL argument. So if I want to change to Portuguese, I can go ahead and click on this. It's going to change this page to be Portuguese, okay? But since I have persistence set, I can go back to the agent URL page. If we scroll down, we'll see that we have Portuguese here on this page as well. This is very powerful. It allows you to control basically user preferences across multiple pages, across your entire site. Now, if we look back at the agent URL stack, you'll notice that there's another persistence, and that is links. Okay, if you set this to link, okay, essentially what it's going to do is when a user passes a URL parameter, in this case English or German, okay, what it's going to do is it's going to actually append those URL parameters to every single link on your web page. So that way, if anyone clicks on those links, we can ensure that those URL parameters will also be passed to those web pages that they linked to, okay? The session is a little bit more magic, right? You don't really see it happening because it happens all in the background. Links are very apparent because when you click on the link, you'll actually see the URL parameters when you click on different links, and the URL parameters will be passed around your website, okay? But the session stuff is pretty cool. It's kind of like magic. That's the ins and outs of the agent stacks. I hope that you found this useful. I hope you understand how, as you see, they're very simple. But by taking those simple ideas, we can really make some really cool, complex situations on our web designs, and really leveraging single web pages instead of having to create multiple web pages or even multiple websites, right? So I'm really excited to see what you guys do with this. I love the agent stacks because as in the other agent video, we talk about how it will improve your website performance because it customizes the data and only supplies the data that you want on a per device basis. And not only that, we can get granular and get it to customize data for that user, right? Depending on what device he's using Windows or iOS or Android, right? This is really getting towards customized data for our visitors. Very exciting stuff. Now, it may have blown your mind that you didn't know that the agent stack does something differently than the other stacks that we've normally seen, like the visibility stacks or the responsive settings inside that are baked into every single stack, right? Those just hide your data. All that data is still downloaded from the server. It still exists if you look at the source code and everything that's downloaded, but it's just hidden. Okay? So just because you're not seeing it doesn't mean it's there. But with the agent stack, the content isn't there at all. It only downloads what it needs, right? It has to be obviously it has to be inside the agent stack, right? But it only downloads the content that is needed for that particular region, right? Or that rule. So that's cool. Now, if you didn't know, we actually have a bunch of other stacks that do similar things in terms of, hiding stuff and not downloading it on the server, okay? That are different from many of the other competitor stacks out there, okay? Such as TARDIS. TARDIS is a server-based rules where you can time, have control of time, right? So, the content will only be downloaded during a specific time window that you set inside this TARDIS stacks. We have Slot Machine, and that allows you to randomly display data, right? So you can give it 10 potential things to display, and it will only display one, okay? But only one is downloaded, right? Not all 10, like some other things out there, okay? Other things will download all 10 and show one. My Slot Machine only downloads one. So Slot Machine's a really cool stack for randomly displaying data. It's cool. We have GeoTarget, which allows you to display data based on the location or IP address of your user. So that's a really good thing in terms of if you want to show something to your particular country or your city or locale, right? Your state. That is a great stack for targeting those users. So yeah. So again, displaying things on the server and downloading exactly what you need will definitely improve web performance, right? Especially with images, right? Images are big and they take a while to download. So I hope you found this video useful. I hope you enjoy Agent and check out some of those other stacks I mentioned, right? Slot Machine, TARDIS, GeoTarget. I think those are the three that are kind of very strongly related to Agent, and in terms of controlling content and only sending the necessary content down to the browser. So again, thank you very much for watching. I am off to our Friday Hangouts. I'll see you later. Bye.